And then it also is providing the issues in terms of the environment. And that's about restoring and providing ecological values and ecosystem services for the Murray-Darling Basin. Why is the environment being featured in the Water Act? Why is it featured in the National Water Initiative? Well, that gets back to this issue that the drought itself helped to create those very much those issues in terms of the trade-offs. There's a whole range of slew reports looking at the state of the environment, different parts of the basin, indicating there was a crisis situation in a number of areas, and particularly the lower part of the basin of Murray Mountain. So then that leads us, in terms of getting now to very close to recent history, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and the Basin Plan. The authority was created by the Water Act 2007, and it's charged with coming up with a basin plan. There are a number of things that the authority is charged with doing. I just want to stress those 4 points here. It's providing water requirements for key environmental assets, ecosystem services to sites of ecological significance, key ecosystem functions, and the productive base. What is of particular relevance in my presentation today is number 5. So if number 5 doesn't dominate, it's just one of those 5 criteria the authority has to work with. And that in red is the economic, social, and environmental outcomes are optimized, which goes back again to the Water Act 2007. So the question that we want to face, and we do face as economists, is how do you do that? Well, we've got multiple objectives, multiple instruments, and a bunch of trade-offs. So it's a difficult problem. So we can do our modeling exercises, but ultimately the decisions won't be made by economists. They'll be made by politicians, taking into account, I trust, the advice provided by economists and indeed others as well. So let's just update ourselves. So let's get out of our ivory towers if we were them. I don't think economists are. I think most of us are not in ivory towers. That's why we're economists. We actually care about the world and try to deal with the world. So this is not an ivory tower situation. This is about people on October 15th burning the guide to the proposed basin plan. So the guide to the proposed basin plan is not the basin plan. Okay, it's the guide to it was released on October 8th by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. There are key numbers in that guide, which I'll get to shortly, about the take in terms of the diversions that we can take now by catchment, okay, and by the basin as a whole. Those numbers triggered a whole bunch of responses. Now those responses aren't just in response to those numbers. They are in response to a whole range of things that have gone on in the previous decade, including and especially the millennium drought, including, and I would say especially, the community engagement processes that have gone on in the previous couple of years. So I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, I'm just saying that led to, in part, the sort of things that we see up there. A distinguished fellow of the society moved on with these events that took place on December 8th. And so we need to move on in terms of our thinking and thinking about what we need to be doing, and perhaps thinking of the sort of second best situations that we very much find ourselves today. So this gets to the social side. So I've given you the history and review of it from my perspective. The social side is really the communities, and there are various communities of interest. Okay, so there's communities in terms of irrigators representing themselves. There's communities in terms of where those people live who are not irrigators. Okay, they don't have a body to directly represent them. Now, obviously, the current minister recognizes it and says that any adjustment, and Richard recognized it as well, that any adjustment process is going to have to take into account not just the irrigators, but also those communities. And now we begin to see the end of a consensus that we had in the past, the coalition and the Labor both supporting the water reform processes. 2004 was the coalition that took the lead. The Water Act, there again was the coalition with Malcolm Turnbull. When Labor got in, they supported that, made some amendments, and moved on in terms of updating the National Plan for Water Security, which was a Howard initiative, and made it their own. Now we're seeing that there's a breakdown of this, obviously with the Nationals in the Senate, saying that every house and every business should be given compensation. And we as economists, we sort of say, well, we need to get value for money. The Prime Minister has emphasised that in the recent past about value for money, so very likely we should have value for money. I'm not sure that that generates value for money, but that's part of the debate we find ourselves in as a country. So what's on the table? Well, there's a number of things on the table, and I would suggest we need to do some changes on what those things are, but that's really not what I'm talking about today. People can read my work and look at my statements in the past, but let's look at the two key things that are really on the table at the moment. We don't have the Basin plan yet, it's coming. We have a guide to it, so I can talk to that. And I can talk to the Water for the Future. So that is the Labour update of a 2007 plan initiated by the coalition government. And so Water for the Future is about a pile of money, basically. It's over $12 billion that's been allocated to support water reform and update water activities. There are two bundles of money, or pools of money, that are particularly relevant to Water for the Future. There's one pool of money that's called the Restoring the Balance pool. That's worth $3.1 billion, which is not a trivial sum of money. And that is money that the government has allocated, the Commonwealth government has allocated to purchase water requirements. So it's about spent or committed to spend $1.4 billion already. So it's pretty much halfway there. And the price that they paid so far is about $2,400 a megalitre or million litres. And in addition to that pool of money, there's a commitment that the Prime Minister made in August of 2010 to bridge the gap. And that commitment is a commitment in the if in the proposed in the Basin plan, there's a difference between the long-term average extractions, it's up here, and the sustainable diversion limits. If there's a difference that's not made up by that 3.1 billion or any other alternatives, then the commitment was to bridge the gap, to close it with additional money. I've done some calculations on that, and I would suggest that that's going to be substantially more than $3.1 billion. It's going to be $2 to $3 billion more than the money on the table. In addition, there's another pool of money, and several people in this room have written about this pool of money, including myself. This is about subsidies. Okay, so the second thing is about subsidies. So it's using public money to provide private benefits. There's some public benefits in the sense that the subsidies will be used to generate increased environmental flows. But if you look at those numbers there, we're talking maybe 500 gigalitres. I think a likely number that we're looking at. So if we're talking about value for money, which everyone wants value for money, including the Prime Minister, then it seems to me we want to rejig those numbers in terms of those pools of money to get value for money. Why would we do that? Well, because this is taxpayers' dollars. This is public money being used to what? To generate public benefits. So why wouldn't we want to rejig them? Now, the reason we wouldn't want to rejig them is gets back to what Richard says, is that there may be payments that need to be made or payoffs or whatever you want to use them to assist in the adjustment process. I would argue that there's better ways of doing it than simply improving water use efficiency on farmers or state priority projects. So what does the guide document tell us? This is what's on the table at the moment. This may well change. There's now a new head of the authority, Craig Knowles. We don't know what will happen. It's coming soon, the Basin plan sometime this year. I'm not privileged to any information, but certainly the guide document talked about numbers. The numbers were between 3,000 and 7,000 gigalitres on average. So this is not every year, it's on average. So in a drought period, you'd be getting less than 3,000 gigalitres going for increased environmental flows. Obviously, in other periods where normal or above normal flows, you'd be getting more. And then the authority made the decision to cap it at 4,000 gigalitres a year. And it said it would cap it based on that the socioeconomic impacts were considered to be too high. So this is the issue, okay? This is the issue about a number and the sustainability issues, environment, that's the Water Act, the communities, too high, and the economics. This is where it all meets in this guide document. Now I would contend that there is no evidence to back the 4,000 gigalitre cap. I can't give you a number what it should be. Okay, there's not enough information to provide that. But there's certainly enough information to say that there is no realistic value attached to the 4,000 gigs. So now we get to the third part of the presentation. I've got 10 minutes left, so 5 minutes left. So, can water reform achieve a sustainable basin? Lots of issues that we need to talk about in that. One of the things that's been right in the forefront, you see in the recent events, is the irrigators' concern about the impacts on them from this Water for the Future package and, of course, the reductions associated with the guide document. So the way to do that, of course, is to have a model to look at the sorts of impacts that might occur. So we can have a model that looks at the yield and the crop in each catchment and looks at the net returns, pose various constraints on the model, and then come up with some optimization results. I've done this, and several people in the audience have done this as well. And we can look at the impact on irrigated profits, look at the impact on gross value of irrigated agriculture production. So here's a map of the Murray Basin. Just because of time constraints, this is with a trade outcome. It's very different to what you would see in terms of the guide document because of the trade identification. This is the least cost way to achieve the flows listed in the Murray mouth. It's quite different to what's proposed in the guide document, which would be substantially higher cost. But if you look there, the 3,000 and 4,000 gigs, those are the numbers that come from the guide document. It's 10 to 17% reduction. So substantial reductions in terms of reductions in diversions, irrigated farmers' diversions, much lower proportional reductions in profits and gross value of irrigated agriculture production. As I said, there's been a number of people doing these models. Aares and their models, they actually were paid to do this for the authority. They've got some numbers there associated with different reductions in gigaliters. So we're talking 30 to 40% reductions over long-term averages. Then you see the reductions in the gross value of irrigated agriculture projection. There's a UQ model, University of Queensland, and there's an AIM model as well. So they're not the same. They have constructed in different ways, but they get similar sorts of results. So the impact at the end of irrigated agriculture in the basin is totally, utterly false. It will not happen with the sorts of things that are listed in the guide document. No substance behind that rhetoric. There's also some facts and figures. The column on the right is looking at nominal dollars. The column in the middle is looking at surface water use in gigaliters. So basically what it's showing is over this period of time, from let's say a more or less normal year to 2000, 2001, to 2007, 2008, which is a very, very dry year in the basin, 70% reduction in water use. In nominal terms, it would be obviously bigger. In real value terms, virtually no change in the nominal value and gross value of irrigated agriculture production. Now again, take ourselves out of the model context, look at the reality. We're not going to see the end of irrigated agriculture. We will see different irrigated agriculture in the basin, but it's not the end of it. And then we need to do the community impact. I'm coming to the end of my talk, so I've got a few things I need to say. Obviously, if we do have increased environmental flows, there are positive aspects to that. Okay, it's not all negative. Improved ecosystem services, obviously benefits of flood-prone races as well, productive services, recreational values. So there's positive aspects for the community, as well as there's the negative aspects in terms of reduced profits, etc. that we talked about. Key point here, very important point, in this plan that's coming in the water reform process, water entitlements held by irrigators would be purchased only if they wish to sell them. So there's no stealing, taking, or whatever you want to call it. And so they will make that decision in the best interest of their business and their business decision. So that's going to pour in, at least $3.1 billion. That's on the table. I'm estimating it will cost maybe twice as much as that if they bridge the gap fully. $5–6 billion will go into the basin, into the hands of irrigators. So it's not like they're not being compensated. It's not like it's being taken away from them. It's a business decision that they'll make.